In this chapter, we're going to talk about, we're going to answer these questions. What causes or allows an economy to grow over time? Why are some countries richer than others? Why do some economies grow faster than others? Well, the answers to all those questions is productivity. That is a huge deal. That is what determines our standard of living. This is really everything in macroeconomics. So what is productivity? How do we define productivity? Productivity is simply how much a worker can produce in an hour. Okay, it could be an hour, it could be a month, it could be a year, whatever, but when we talk about productivity, we're talking per hour. So, why do we have a higher standard of living here in the U.S. than, say, in Uruguay? Because a worker can produce more stuff in an hour than a worker in Uruguay. It's that simple. It's about producing the stuff, okay? We've got to produce it. Before we can redistribute it, we've got to produce it, okay? So we're not talking about redistribution. We're talking the actual wealth must be created. And that's what we're talking about is when we talk about productivity. So what determines productivity? Determinants of productivity. Okay. 1, technology. Technology is simply the current understanding of how best to produce goods and services. Okay, well, how's the best way to cut down trees? For example, there are different technologies to do that. You can use a hatchet, okay? If you use a hatchet, it's going to take a very long time. You're going to produce very little wood or paper or anything that's associated with wood. You could use an axe. Well, that'll be done a little quicker. Or you could use chainsaws, okay? Quicker still. Different ways to do things, different levels of technology. If you build houses, you can build out of logs, cement, bricks, drywall. There are different ways to build it, different tools to use. When we travel, different levels of technology, right? Just different ways to do things. Transmitting information. Back in the old days, for a while there was the Pony Express. One horse rider would ride like crazy to a station, change horses, ride some more, then change another horse, and then change riders, and they could dash across pretty quick. But, a new technology came along that put all of the Pony Express riders out of business. That's called the telegraph. After the telegraph came along, no more Pony Express. Okay, and then the telephone, and then, of course, the internet, and different levels of technology. The internet, for example, has been just an amazing reformation of the world economy and globalized, really, the world economy. It brought it together in really amazing ways, and a lot of good things from that, a lot of not so great things from that, a lot of a painful adjustment. So technology is always moving things along and creating better and new ways, more productive ways to do things. And as a result, our standard of living, our collective standard of living just keeps on going up and up and up and up. Travel, different technologies there. You can walk. You can ride a bike. Okay, you can ride a horse, drive a car, get on an airplane. So there are different technologies. Boy, it used to be, when I fly across the country, I'm just amazed. You know, it's 4 hours, New York to San Francisco, maybe 5. And I'm complaining, okay, 5-hour trip. Then I remember back in the old days, wagon trains took months of hardship, just exhausting days of walking and riding the wagons and fixing wagons and breaking down. And oh my goodness, wow, has that increased productivity? Okay, well, capital. Capital. Well, there are different kinds of capital. Let's start with human capital. Human capital is simply the knowledge and skills workers acquire through education, training, and experience. Okay, that's what you're doing right now. You're acquiring human capital. You're investing in human capital. You're learning stuff. Okay, so human capital is how much of the current state of technology has been transferred to the workforce. You can look at it that way. So you've got this current state of technology. How much of that is actually incorporated in the workforce? There's our level of human capital. Let's say the boss of a little bunch of lumberjacks, are out there. Let's say he goes out and buys a whole bunch of a brand new invention called a chainsaw, drops it down, gives, okay, buddy, here's a chainsaw. Everybody has a chainsaw. Go out and cut those trees down. We need a lot of houses built. We need a lot of paper. This will help us do the job. We'll do the job a lot faster, be a lot more productive. Gives a big speech and then walks away. Everybody just sits there staring at it. Well, the chainsaw, this level of technology exists, but if nobody knows how to use the thing, it doesn't do that much good. So you've got to know how to use the chainsaw. Okay, that's human capital. You could say that technology is like the books in the library. You've got all these books in the library, and human capital would be how much people go to the library and read those books. Okay, so the books exist, they're there, but if nobody goes and reads them, well, we don't have the human capital to use the technology. Okay, the third one is physical capital. Okay, so we've got two kinds of capital. I can't talk and write at the same. I can't talk and spell at the same time. Okay, physical capital. So we've got human capital, we've got physical capital. Physical capital are goods that are used in the production of other goods. So goods that are used to produce or in the production of other goods. Okay, a computer, for example. That's physical capital. Computers are used all over the place in businesses, in actual production, and designing stuff, all kinds of software, factories, equipment, tools, hammers, screwdrivers, all that is physical capital. And natural resources. Natural resources, forests, lakes, streams, navigable waterways, minerals, okay, oil, all that kind of thing. Places that have a lot of it are better off than those places that do not. So if you are a worker and you have all those things available to you, you have a high level of technology, you have a high level of human capital and physical capital, and natural resources at your disposal, you're going to be a more productive worker, and you are going to have a higher standard of living than a worker who lives somewhere that doesn't have those things available. They're going to have a lower standard of living simply because they're producing less stuff. We define standard of living as, who has more stuff. Well, economies that produce more stuff have more than economies that produce less stuff. And it all hinges on productivity. Now, when we talk about standard of living and so forth, sometimes students will talk about minimum wage or unions. Now, those have had a big impact on the redistribution of wealth, but not on the creation of wealth. Okay, that's why I said at the beginning, we're talking about wealth creation. Unions and laws like minimum wage have been successful, more so at different times than others. Unions don't play as big a part in our economy these days as they once did. And of course, the minimum wage, only if it's above the equilibrium wage does it have any impact. But for better or for worse, we're talking about redistribution of wealth, taken away from one group, given to another group kind of thing. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about how it's created, and that's productivity is the name of the game. And so if you want to go to a developing country and solve the poverty problem, this is how you do it. Okay, this is it. We've got to increase their level of productivity. We've got to introduce them, say, to new technologies, to educate the workers. All these things. They may not live in a place where there are natural resources. They might be landlocked in the desert, say in Africa. That makes things a lot tougher. But you can't, if you're going to, for example, yes, to get started, we need to, send some foreign aid. Yes, indeed. But what kind of foreign aid? Well, again, if we're going to produce a solution to the problem, a long-term sustainable solution, this is going to have to be it. This is how you get out of it, is increasing productivity. You've got to increase the productivity of those workers. That's how you get your way, or dig your way, if you will, out of poverty. Now, there's an upside and a downside to productivity. And in the long term, the upside is a higher standard of living. In the short term, there is a downside, and we already alluded to that. New technologies, especially when new something comes along that's more productive, it can knock an entire industry out. Talked about the Pony Express workers losing their jobs to the telegraph. The computer, the desktop computer, that put zillions of secretaries out of work because the computer's now the secretary. You didn't have to write down something to have the secretary type up anymore. You just sat there at the computer and, with word processing software, even mediocre typists could eventually become pretty good typists. I'm certainly one of those. You know what? Back with the old typewriters. Has anyone ever seen one in this class? But yeah, there was this thing called a typewriter ages ago, and you know what? You had to be pretty darn good at typing. You put the paper in and you typed on the thing. I mean, you had to be a skilled typist. And to try to do that, which I did a few times, and you know what? I said, forget it. I spent half my time correcting my mistakes. So I would take my papers to, like when I was in college, I'd take my papers to someone, a professional typist who advertised and typed out school papers. And you know what? Wow. They were very, very talented, very skilled. But you know what? With the word processing, it's easy to correct mistakes and easy to write. You can move paragraphs around with ease. Correct spelling mistakes, correct typos, the whole bit. I mean, so even mediocre, with enough practice, this is what happened to me. With enough practice, I began to not just write and then type my own papers on a word processor, which was kind of how you did it in the beginning. You write and type at the same time now. Okay, you sit down and write a paper at the keyboard. That's how you actually write. So you're writing and typing in one step, and then you just edit, move things around, and it's a piece of cake now. But lots and lots of secretaries lost their jobs from that. So are we more productive? Yes. Were newer, better jobs created? Yes. Yes. Now a whole industry of IT and computer developers and repair people, whole new industries have popped up. The thing is, as things become more productive, more technology, better technology, and productivity increases, yes, it creates jobs, but these jobs are more take more human capital, actually, to do those jobs. So the jobs that go away require less human capital, and the jobs that replace them require more human capital. And that can be a barrier. And that's why if you learn anything in college, anywhere along the way, the most important skill that you can learn is to learn. Learn how to learn. Because you're going to have to learn new things all throughout your career. You're going to have to read and understand. And you're always going to be in training to learn how to do something new. Learning never stops. Never stops. There's always something new that must be learned. So the most important skill anyone could ever get is to learn how to learn. That's going to keep you on top of things.